if you're just not ready for that, you got to let me know so I can do this properly and get you the fuck out of here. Or at least as properly as she knew how to. It's a hard thing for me to talk about. He told her it wouldn't happen again, and sure enough, shortly after my sister's birth, he cheated again with the same chick. It was pretty much a mutual departure after that. That was 70 or 97 or 98. That absolutely decimated my mom. When I read these journals, she was deep in. She was really in love with this guy. So much so that she gave up her whole old life and decided to let him put kids in her and just the dude waits until just after I've completely bonded to him and right after my sister's born, and leaves this woman with this huge new home that she built for this new family with her grandmother's money that she borrowed, and these two creatures that you have to teach how to navigate through this world, and just fuck. God damn it. He just left like that. I remember the regular routine was to get home from school, take off my backpack if I happened to give enough of a fuck, and rush to my parents' room to greet my dad. It was always asleep right on the side of the bed, and they had their own sides on the bed and stuff, and it wasn't it was funny. It was just cute how they had their own side of the bed, but his was on the left side if you're walking up to it, and he would be there taking his nap, waiting for me to get home, and then I'd wake him up and he'd greet me for a bit, maybe make us some food or something, and then return to his nap, and I'd go about my day and play video games or whatever on the N64 that he bought me. It was sweet. But one day he just wasn't there, and I remember I went up to the babysitter, Kathy or whatever her name was, and I asked where she was. I asked where he was, and she kneeled down or squatted down or whatever, and she told me, I don't think he's gonna be coming back for a while, Travis. And later on that day, I just remember I remember my mom just holding me in the living room on the floor, just weeping and weeping and weeping. It seemed like hours. And I remember nobody would tell me to my face what happened. And even though I was still pretty young, I felt too old for that. When Kathy or whatever the babysitter's name told me when she told me he wouldn't be coming back for a while, I knew what that meant. I mean, I didn't want them to know that I knew what that meant. I felt betrayed by the fact that none of the adults I felt betrayed by the fact that none of the adults were adult enough to tell me that my dad just left me. I wanted them to do it before I said it, and they wanted me to say it. It was just fucking bullshit, I knew damn well what he did, but it sucked so bad that I refused to, accept responsibility. I was just, I'm just a kid. I told him, I didn't say, I'm sure I didn't say it, but I acted like, I'm just a kid. I don't know where my dad is, but I expect him back soon because I know you're not just going to take my dad away with no warning or goodbyes or anything, so I'll just be here waiting while you guys go ahead and do that for me and take care of everything. And because of this, I think that's why I never experienced the whole, it's my fault that you guys are separated thing. I never cried. I never even felt that hurt, really, because I just kept this naive assumption in my head that, well, next time I get home, he'll be here. But, I remember it was my 9th birthday a few years later. The birthday that nobody showed up for, if you remember. If you're one of my older fans, I talked about it a while ago. This was my birthday that, nobody showed up for, and then my mom, it was the first one anyway, my mom just took me inside after the day and went by, and I just sat out there waiting. I remember I just sat out there waiting for who I had convinced myself were my friends, my 3rd grade classmates I was waiting on them to show up. And it was a new school that had just been built that year, Tally Elementary in Kerrville, Texas. So it was the first non-Catholic schooling experience I had, which was awesome, but it meant nobody really knew each other beforehand since it was a new school. And And you can probably tell I'm not good at jumping into a clique while there's still time. But I wasn't old enough to see that yet. I thought everyone was my friend, especially there because, you know, we had dropped the Jesus, or at least traded it in for patriotism since 9/11 had just happened, and that was always what's always being talked about over the telecom system or whatever, the announcement system. But anyway, I remember when I was sitting out there in front of my driveway with the stupid fucking red balloon on the mailbox, just having this epiphany. I remember I wanted to do the same shit I did whenever people usually fucked me over. I wanted to do what I naturally learned to do after my father left, and just, you know, I'm a kid, please fix it for me, and just play victim and never admit that I truly understand the fucking situation. But I was like, you know what? Sometimes people just don't fucking like you, and there doesn't have to be a reason. You know, it doesn't matter how good of a person you are. Some people, they're just gonna disregard you, and you can't get caught up on that. Haters gonna hate. You know what I'm saying? And the reason I'm going on this personal shit again isn't because I'm getting sidetracked, but because not only was that the moment that I finally looked at my dad leaving me and really fucking looked into the eye and really looked into the eyes of that and swallowed it, but that was the very moment that I learned how to deal with my mom, you know, as a person. I gained a lot from that day. It was such a literal visual representation of something that I seriously was going to need to learn to make it through what was to come in my life. And because of that, it allowed my little 8 to 9 year old brain to process all that. So yeah, that was a very sentimental moment for me. Anyway, so after my mom got back on her feet from my dad leaving her, she promptly opened up a nifty coffee store where we lived, which at the time was Kerrville, Texas. This is circa 1999, 2000. It was a cool little business. I got free rocks with imprints on them and Sobeys and stuff. But the shop didn't last long. I think my mom just didn't like the whole thing. Building and then running a business from scratch is such a hassle when you can just climb aboard an already built aircraft and then take flight safely and reliably. You get what I'm saying? As opposed to being all ghetto about it. But no, she decided it just wasn't for her. Now, at some point here, my mom got back into hardcore drugs between 40 and 45. She ended up overdosing on something, and then we went into foster care for a while. And then our godparents took us in for a couple months, and they decided that they didn't want kids, so we went back. And then shortly after that, my mom got out of treatment, and she had recovered from all that. And we went home to live happily ever after for about another year. During this year or so, my mom worked at a place called the Java Pump over in Kerrville. We still live there. And I remember the Java Pump fondly. It's not there anymore, but it was like a bar, but not quite. I think they actually had a small bar area, but for the most part it was a cafe. It was just this rundown area for all junkies and bikers and shit. It was awesome. I would always go skate out front or just across the street. I was Marion's son, so they all knew me, all the bikers and shit. It was a great time. So now my mom was going to meetings for all of her addictions. She was going very, very frequently by this point, and I would always go with her because we didn't have a babysitter at the time or whatever. But it was cool. I always got to skate out there and stuff. And I eventually got a pet turtle named Crush. I named him after the Finding Nemo guy. Anyway, but no, that was when we came back into Kerrville because Finding Nemo wasn't out by then, of course. So anyway, looking back, I can now see that she was going to these meetings so often because her urge to return to drugs was getting worse as time progressed. And being at the Java Pump around all those addicts and just that whole culture, it wasn't easy for her to keep herself away. Now, she had met a few guys during the small window of time, like Tommy or whatever. Tommy was cool. She met Darren during this time period, and that altered my life for years to come. For those that don't know, he was a super abusive stepfather of my sister and I. He was doing his stupid construction work or whatever at the time, and would always go to my mom's coffee shop and eat a stupid lunch out front of Hot Pocket or whatever. And my mom's story, as my mom's story has it, he would always go out into the courtyard of her coffee shop, and he would eat a Hot Pocket every day. And she walked up to him one day and offered him a real lunch and said, I'm not going to let you have a Hot Pocket out here anymore or whatever. And that's how all that shit started. Anyway, they had a quick fling during my mom's last year or two there in Kerrville. But shortly after I had turned 9, I'll say roughly 6 months or so, my mom had made what I understand to be the boldest decision of her life. It was the first half of 2003, so she had just turned 41. She was working at the Java Pump every night, as well as squeezing in all of the AA meetings or whatever. And she came to the conclusion that it was all about to fall back into drugs if she were to keep herself around that community of addicts there in Kerrville. So she decided to knock out 2 birds with one big ass stone. She was going to kick her addiction in the fucking teeth and also get over her social anxiety, which had crutched her for so long. Now I have her super anxiety condition. We can't talk to people in public We can't talk to people in public out of nowhere. I mean, everything takes psyching up. If you want to frustrate me, just throw me into a social situation without more than like a night to sleep on the thought of it. Like after that, for me anyway, it's fine. I can hold it together, but I definitely need lots of preparation, and that includes, going out and grabbing lunch, those types of things, going to the movies, going grocery shopping. I'll lose my shit if I don't have time to process the whole event and plan it out as much as possible. And even if the event's going down 9 out of 10 times, it's an uneasy and uncomfortable process for me. But she was the same way, and she had such a difficult time getting over her inability to properly conduct herself in social situations, and she felt it was the only option. It was a last resort thing in that sense, I think. We sold the almost 8,000 square foot that my grandmother had built us in 1997, and we sold almost all of our belongings along with it, keeping our essentials. And after selling everything in like a month or 2 long garage sale, my mom drove up here to Houston and purchased a 35-foot fifth wheel trailer. It was a 2002 Keystone Sprinter. The specific model was a 350 FWBHS. It's all one thing, the 350 FWBHS, all caps. And we bought this big ass dually truck to like a Ford F-150 or whatever, to drag the Sprinter around with. For anybody who cares, the address of the home that we moved out of and sold was 817 Saddlewood Boulevard. And good luck getting there or finding it on Google Maps. I actually think the couple we sold the place to still lives there. They're raising their teenage daughters there still, but it's like a gated community and all that. I can't wait till they get the street view and shit there in Google, but I check back every once in a while and they never do. Anyway, in about a day we had our bags packed and we drove up to Houston the next day, and we spent the whole day getting everything in order for the trip that we had ahead of us, which had no specific destination, and we stayed the night in the trailer. At the lot where you buy the trailers and RVs and shit. I pass by there every once in a while when I'm going outside of Houston. The morning after that, at like 5 a.m., she woke Kelly and I up, and I remember being way excited. I woke up instantly and started helping my mom attach the trailer to the ball thing that was in the middle of the bed of the truck. There's a little button on the front of the trailer that lifts the front up and down like a hydraulic system, and my job was to lift the trailer, guide her as she backed up to the trailer with the rear view mirror on the sides or whatever, and or the side view mirrors, and then lowering it down onto the thing. Like I'd stop her and then tell her like, okay, stop, and then I'd lower it down. It was awesome. It was powerful. This is a task that, if you're not skilled at it, it can be very fucking frustrating and difficult. I remember the sun had come up by the time her and I managed to get it hooked up, and Kelly had fallen back asleep in the back of the truck by that point. But once we got it attached, we hit the road. We proceeded to travel up through the eastern and central U.S. for a few months, and we eventually found ourselves staying longer than usual at a trailer park in Pearl Harbor, Florida, just outside of Tampa. The place was called Calidesi RV Resort, Caladesi, according to my bullet points here. So we just, we developed a liking for the place, and Before long, my mom was working at a local UPS store there, in Palm Harbor, which of course she quickly became manager of. And Kelly and I were going to a thing called a Sudbury School. If you've never heard of these,